Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew from Team Respawn, and I made a couple of videos a while back ranking all of the Halo Wars 2 leaders. I made an original video and then redid that video because so many of the leaders have changed over time from performance tweaks and new leaders and balance improvements and changes of that sort. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same style of video for Halo Wars 1. I'm going to go ahead and rank through all the Halo Wars 1 leaders. And really what's interesting about this is statistically, none of the leaders have really changed in Halo Wars 1 over its lifespan, at least from my observation and assumption in Halo Wars 1, and they've all really stayed the same in Halo Wars 2. Okay, Halo Wars 1. Thanks. So, I'm going to go ahead and rank the 6 leaders starting from worst to first, and this is my completely unprofessional and objective opinion. So, you may disagree, you may not, and if you want, and I hope you do, post your ranking of the leaders in the comments down below. Love to see how you rank the leaders. Now, here we go. Number 6 is Sergeant Forge, and it pains me to put Sergeant Forge as the worst leader in Halo Wars 2, but he is objectively the worst. Okay, why do I keep saying Halo Wars 2? I'm such a pleb. The worst leader in Halo Wars 1. Let me tell you why he's the worst leader in Halo Wars 1 is because, well, I do think he has a kick-ass economy when you get the heavy supply pads right off the bat in Halo Wars 1, and I really do believe that the rolling economy perk in Halo Wars 2 for Forge is a direct nod to that sort of play style and improvement that Forge had in Halo Wars 1. Well, I do think that that's pretty cool. I just don't think that the Grizzlies are that good of a unit to really be him to be a good leader overall. And we did some Mythbusters, and the Grizzlies are sometimes worse, or they're sometimes just barely better than the regular Scorpion tanks in Halo Wars 1. And honestly, the Scorpion tank's canister shell is far more superior than the Grizzlies' canister shell in Halo Wars 1. So it's in your best interest to never play as Forge. He is a good leader in the beginning of the game because, again, you get an economy rolling pretty quickly, and you can use that to kind of rush some people. That's just the only upside for Forge. I think his Carpet Bomb, while it looks really cool, it's definitely the coolest looking super leader power thing out of all the UNSC leaders. It sucks. It can't hit any air units at all, so if your opponent goes all air, you're just kind of screwed. You can't even touch them. And unless your opponent has like Locusts or Warthogs or some really low health vehicles, the Carpet Bomb isn't going to actually kill anything. It does do a good bit of damage on buildings if you do it in a diagonal pattern, but other than that, I really just don't like Forge, and I think he's a pretty bad leader overall. Number 5 is the Prophet of Regret, and I feel like, unfortunately, while the Prophet of Regret is pretty cool, he's overall, when he gets himself fully upgraded, he has flying abilities. He becomes the flying chair. I like to call him the chair for short. And while that's cool and everything, and it can be really extremely OP, it's very easy to shut that down. You can do a few things. You can get one vampire, and the chair is worthless, and that's why he's ranked number 5 on this list, because he's so easy to shut down. You can get one vampire and stasis drain him, and he's not going anywhere unless you recall the chair or you lose the chair. And then you can also do a cryo bomb from Anders with a disruption bomb, and he's stuck, and he won't be able to recall him from that point anyway. Or if he stands still with a stasis drain from a vampire, you can just use Cutter's Mac Blast and take him out completely there. So the Prophet is pretty easy to take out, and therefore I'm ranking him as number 5 because all of the Covenant leaders are pretty much identical. The only thing different about them is what hero unit you do have, for the most part. Number 4 is the Brute Chieftain. And the Brute Chieftain's pretty good. I think he's a very solid leader all around. I think the Brute squads are a great unit. Those are the Brute squads that you build in your main base. I think they're pretty cool. They're much more effective than Grunt squads, and they're good for rushing. You could rush very early on with the Brute Chieftain with his hammer and get some Brute squads and some Grunt squads in there, and you can have a pretty good rush force with the Brute Chieftain. I love his stun ability. It really sucks when you're getting the Johnson handed to you when he has the stun upgraded on the hammer, and the pull ability is really cool too. And I think it's pretty cool and also pretty aggravating that he can pull lockdown cobras and vehicles of that sort into the area of stun and effect. Other than that, I think the Brute Chieftain, where his weakest point is he can't attack air unless you're going to use your Y ability, and he's a pretty slow-moving leader, and he's pretty easy to take out if you get a lot of tanks going or flamers or whatever on the Brute Chieftain. Number 3 is the Arbiter, and while I think the Arbiter is the best Covenant leader in the game by far, I think that he's not the best leader in the game, and the Arbiter in Halo Wars 1 was too OP. He really needed to be nerfed, in my opinion, because not only when he gets invisible, he's like an infinite scout unit, and while you can see him from the camera per se, none of your units can discover him, so he's like an infinite scout unit right there. When he rages, he's having such a spasm attack flying around, half the time your shit can't even attack him, because it's either missing or your Scorpion tanks are trying to turn around or whatever, and then he regains health every time he attacks or kills something. So I think he's a way too OP, and you really got to throw your disruption bombs at him, and he's so fast when you throw the disruption bomb down, he can just run out of it unless you kind of block him in or whatever. I think the Arbiter is way too overpowered, and he is probably the best Covenant leader to do because he can attack air units with his Y ability, and he's pretty quick to run around with. He's a good leader. Number 2 is Anders, and I like Anders a lot because I think Anders is a very good support leader due to the cryo bomb. I think a cryo bomb is fantastic if it's used correctly, especially a defensive cryo bomb. I think is great. I do love the Gremlins. I think the Gremlins are by far one of the coolest vehicles in the game next to the Cobras, and they're very underused in the multiplayer for Halo Wars 1, and I wish more people would use them because they're pretty awesome. And I think just overall, Anders is very solid, and you really can't go wrong playing with Anders. You're supposed to really go air with Anders, of course. And I think with Anders, the Hawks are really, really good, especially when you get a big Air Force going. They are pretty OP as a group, and I think Anders is pretty good. I think the biggest exploit or the biggest way to counter Anders is to play as Anders, because if they're going air as Anders, you should go air as Anders, and you'll just be shooting cryo bombs at each other and see who survives that. So there you have it, and I think also Anders works really well with Cutter, and that's a great 1-2 punch. Number 1, best leader in Halo Wars 1, and there's no question about it, it's Captain Cutter. I don't know what if you thought it was anyone else than Captain Cutter, then you're smoking crack, or you're on too many dangos. You need to stop being on all the dangos. But Captain Cutter is just amazing, and I think really the game was when they designed the multiplayer, like, all right, here's Captain Cutter, that's the first leader that we're going to make, because Captain Cutter has so many great leader powers, passive powers, whole bunch of things. So the passive power for Captain Cutter is your base gets 1 upgrade right off the bat. So anytime you build an expansion base with Cutter, you already have 5 base slots and turrets. You're not going to have to worry about that upgrading your base or anything, and when you start the game, you have a fully upgraded base ready to go to build your building. So that's going to save you some time, especially in the early game, and also help you get your defenses up when you're expanding your base. Of course, the ODSTs are amazing, and while the ODSTs do get shredded by Scorpions if they're in a group or whatever, you can really troll bases for eternity if you know what you're doing with the ODSTs and you drop them correctly. So that's the ODSTs alone are phenomenal. It's a great super unit for Captain Cutter. I think the Elephant was fantastically implemented for Captain Cutter, the way that you could get defense turrets and ceramic armor, use it as a barracks. You can use that as a support or rush unit to drop an elephant near someone's base and just pump out flamethrowers and marines. You can't go wrong there. And of course, the Mac Blast is amazing. It's so satisfying to get a double or triple Mac Blast, the double, triple, double Mac Blast going, the Octo Mac, or whatever you want to call it. Once you get a couple of your teammates with Mac Blast, it's just going to be a good time. And Captain Cutter is by far the best leader in Halo Wars 1. So there you have it. Those are my rankings of all the leaders in Halo Wars 1. Post your thoughts and your ranking of the leaders in Halo Wars 1 down in the comments below. Love to hear what you have to say about my list. And there's a bunch of Halo Wars 1 content on the channel if you're really curious. We have a walkthrough of Halo Wars Definitive Edition. We have our Mythbuster series, You Pick, We Play, strategy videos, and multiplayer games, all on the channel if you want to check out those playlists. There is a lot of Halo Wars content on my channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Andrew from Team Respawn, and I will see you next time.